In the 1970s, Britain built tractors that were faster, stranger, and more advanced than anything Ford or Massey dared to sell you. A tractor that hit 40 miles an hour, a 163 horsepower V8 monster from Manchester. A four-wheel drive machine so unpopular that barely 100 ever left the factory. Most of these companies are gone now, dead, sold, or forgotten. But the machines survive, rusting in barns across the country. Here are 10 of them. Number 10. The Leyland 154. Let's start small, very small. When British Leyland took over Nuffield and moved tractor production up to Bathgate in Scotland, it inherited a strange little machine, the Nuffield 425. In November 1969, it got a new coat of two-tone blue paint, 3 bars across the grille, and a new name, the Leyland 154. The number told you exactly what was under the bonnet. 1.5 liters, 4 cylinders. That engine was the BMC B series, the same basic 4-cylinder unit that powered Austin saloons and BMC vans. Around 25 horsepower in diesel form. There was a petrol option too, running the 1622cc version of the engine, and a lot of the tractors sent to North America were petrol machines with a downswept exhaust that gave them a completely different profile. And here's the part people forget. This thing had 9 forward gears. 3 ranges, 3 speeds in each, plus 3 in reverse. On a 25 horsepower tractor, it also had 2 PTO speeds, 540 and 1000 RPM. For a machine that cost around 680 pounds in deluxe trim at launch, that was a remarkable amount of specification. The 154 was the tractor for the smallholder, the market gardener, the council parks department. It was the one you bought when you didn't need a 384 and couldn't justify a Massey. And because it wasn't glamorous, nobody wrote about it. It just quietly worked. It stayed in the Leyland catalog right through the 70s, only bowing out around 1979, meaning this design, rooted in BMC's compact tractor experiments of the mid-60s, survived essentially unchanged for the best part of a decade and a half. Here's the detail that tells you how odd its position was. When the law came in requiring quiet cabs on British tractors from 1976, Leyland fitted its new Q cab to the 245, the 262, the 272. The 154 didn't get one. It was too small, too cheap, too much of a specialist tool to be worth the engineering money. Today, the 154 is one of the most affordable ways into classic tractor ownership in Britain. It's light enough to work on without a hoist. Parts are still available. And there's a whole generation of farmers who learned to drive on one and who couldn't tell you a single thing about it because it was never the tractor anyone bragged about. That's exactly why it belongs on this list. Number 9. The Leyland 4100 and 485. Now here's a Leyland almost nobody has ever seen. By the mid-70s, four-wheel drive was the thing every farmer wanted and almost no British manufacturer could build in-house. Leyland's answer was to not build it in-house. They went to County Commercial Cars in Fleet, Hampshire, the four-wheel drive specialists, and had County convert Leyland skid units into equal-wheel four-wheel drive tractors. The result was the Leyland 485, an 85 horsepower machine, and the Leyland 4100, rated at 100. Think about what that means. A County-built Leyland. Blue paint on a chassis engineered by a company that spent its entire existence converting Fords. They were rare when they were new, and they're vanishingly rare now. By most accounts, only around 100 of the 485 and 4100 combined were ever built. Why so few? 2 reasons, and both of them are pure 1970s Britain. First, they simply didn't sell. Farmers who wanted a serious four-wheel drive tractor already knew where to go. They went to County or Roadless or Muir-Hill, and they bought a machine with a Ford heart. A blue Leyland with a County axle was an unfamiliar proposition. Second, and this is the killer, the quiet cab legislation. When the 1976 rules came in, every tractor needed an approved low-noise cab. Adapting the Leyland Q cab to fit the four-wheel drive conversions was going to cost money. Leyland looked at the sales figures, looked at the engineering bill, and simply dropped the 485 and the 4100 from the range. That's how a British tractor dies. Not in a blaze of failure, in a spreadsheet. The six-cylinder, two-wheel drive, 2100 horsepower, 10 forward gears, 2 reverse, soldiered on until 1979. But the four-wheel drive Leylands were gone, and with them went the company's only real shot at the high-horsepower traction market. And the whole Leyland tractor story ends not long after. Production at Bathgate finished in January 1982, when the business was sold to Charles Nickerson, who owned Marshall at Gainsborough. 60 years of Nuffield and Leyland tractor engineering packed up and moved to Lincolnshire. If you ever see a genuine county-built Leyland at a rally, stop and look. You may not get another chance. Number 8. The David Brown 1212 Hydra-Shift, Meltham Mills, Huddersfield, 1971. David Brown launches a tractor with a transmission that shouldn't have existed in a British farmyard for another decade. The 1212 replaced the 1200 Select-O-Matic. Same basic recipe, a 3.6-liter four-cylinder diesel, around 72 horsepower. But where the 1200 had a conventional gearbox, the 1212 had something David Brown called Hydra-Shift. 12 forward gears, 4 reverse. And crucially, you could change between the shift ratios on the move, under load, without touching the clutch. If you've only ever driven a modern tractor with a power shift, that sounds unremarkable. In 1971, on a British farm, it was close to witchcraft. You're plowing, you hit a heavy patch, the engine starts to labor, and instead of stopping, dipping the clutch, and hunting for a lower gear, you simply move a lever and the tractor keeps pulling. This wasn't a gimmick. In 1976, the Hydra-Shift transmission won a Design Council Award, reportedly the first ever given to a farm tractor, a British gearbox built in Yorkshire, being recognized as genuinely world-class design. So why is the 1212 forgotten? Because of what happened to the company. In 1972, David Brown Tractors was bought by the American conglomerate Tenneco, which owned J.I. Case. By 1973, a new joint color scheme arrived, orchid white, power red, black, and the word Case started appearing alongside David Brown on the bonnet. The proud independent Yorkshire tractor maker had become a division. The 1212 kept selling through the 70s, but the brand it belonged to was being slowly erased. The Meltham factory finally closed in 1988, with production moving to the old International Harvester plant at Doncaster. There's a real sadness in that. A tractor good enough to win a National Design Award, built by a firm that would be absorbed, rebadged, and shut down within a generation. Hydra-Shift boxes have a reputation for being complicated to overhaul, and that's kept some restorers away. But find a 1212 that's been looked after, and you're driving a piece of transmission engineering that was genuinely ahead of the market. Number 7. The David Brown 1412. Stay at Meltham, because in December 1974, David Brown did something it had never done before. It bolted a turbocharger to a tractor. The 1410 and 1412 arrived together, and they were the most powerful tractors the company had ever built. The engine was the familiar 3.6-liter four-cylinder, but now turbocharged, producing around 91 horsepower. The difference between the two models was the gearbox. The 1410 came with David Brown's 4-range, 3-speed synchromesh manual box. The 1412 got the Hydra-Shift, that same clutchless, shift-on-the-move transmission that had debuted on the naturally aspirated 1212 3 years earlier. So the 1412 was the flagship, turbo power, plus the trick gearbox. Britain's answer to the increasingly muscular tractors coming out of Europe and America. The engineering detail here is lovely. David Brown used 2 different sizes of turbocharger over the life of the model. Later machines got a smaller diameter turbo, which spun up faster, cut the turbo lag, and helped keep the engine cooler. That's a manufacturer listening to its customers and quietly improving the product, which is exactly what small companies do, and big ones often don't. There was a 4-wheel drive option on the 1410 too. Early David Brown 4-wheel drive machines used an Italian Celine axle. From 1976, they switched to a German-built Kramer unit with a staggered driveline. Read that again. A Yorkshire tractor, owned by an American conglomerate, running an Italian or German front axle. That's the 70s British machinery industry in one sentence. Cabs were changing fast too. In December 1975, David Brown introduced a new Q-cab, standard across the range, by mid-1976. Then came the option of a Sakura Deluxe cab from the Danish cab specialist, built at their factory in Barnsley. The 1412 was a proper, serious, capable tractor, and it's almost entirely absent from the popular memory of British farming. Everyone remembers a Ford 7000. Almost nobody remembers that Yorkshire built a turbocharged semi-power shift rival at almost the same time. Number 6. The Muir-Hill 121. Now we go to Manchester, and things get strange. Muir-Hill started life in the early 1920s at Trafford Park, making accessories for the Fordson tractor loaders, wheels, even little railway shunting locomotives built on Fordson skid units. By the mid-60s, they'd moved into building serious high-horsepower four-wheel drive tractors. The Muir-Hill 121 arrived in 1972 as part of the new Series 2 range, replacing the earlier 101. Under the bonnet, the Ford 2715E six-cylinder engine, rated at 120 horsepower. Behind it, a Ford gearbox and rear end, derived from the Ford 5000. But here's what made a Muir-Hill, where County and Roadless bought Ford skid units and largely kept Ford's bodywork. Muir-Hill threw all of it away. Every cosmetic panel was their own. The result was that angular, slab-sided, upright look, and it wasn't just styling. Building their own tin work was actually cheaper than buying Ford bonnets. The mechanical layout was different too. Muir-Hill used a high-clearance central driveline running down the middle of the tractor to the front axle, rather than County's twin prop shafts running down either side of the engine. That gave the Muir-Hill something the County simply couldn't match: a genuinely useful turning circle. Owners who've driven both consistently say the Muir-Hill is the easier machine to work with on headlands. The Series 2 cab was, for 1972, close to luxurious. Flat floor, walk-through, fully glazed, rubber-mounted to kill vibration, bigger fuel tank than the old one, 01, and a few years later, a dual power option that doubled the gears from 8 to 16. By 1978, the Series 3 arrived with a bigger cab, better soundproofing, air conditioning, and a radio. On a farm tractor. In the 70s, Muir-Hill tractor production came to an end in the early 1980s, as corporate reshuffling swallowed the company. It had passed into the Babcock Group by the end of the 70s, and the tractor line didn't survive the restructuring. 120 horsepower of Manchester steel, wearing a Ford engine and nothing else Ford at all. There's nothing else quite like it. Number 5. The Muir-Hill 171, and now the big one. In 1969, Muir-Hill had launched the 161, and for a time, it was Britain's most powerful tractor. A Perkins V8 510 engine, producing 163 horsepower, twin exhaust stacks standing up either side of the bonnet. A 10-speed Fuller gearbox, a truck gearbox, because the Ford transmission simply couldn't cope. In 1971, a Muir-Hill 161 would set you back 5,831 pounds. To put that in perspective, the biggest Massey Ferguson on the British market that year, the MF 1080, was about 3,090 pounds. The Muir-Hill cost nearly double the price of a top-end Massey. Then in 1975 came the replacement, the Muir-Hill 171, bigger V8, the Perkins V8 540, rated at 170 horsepower. And when the Series 3 range came along in 1978, the 171 was pushed further still to around 177. Just picture this thing. 4 equal wheels, slab-sided bodywork, a V8 diesel under the bonnet, twin stacks, enormous ground clearance because of that central driveline. In a decade when a big British farm tractor meant 90 or 100 horsepower, Muir-Hill was selling you 170 plus. The 171 was a contractor's tractor and a big estate tractor. It was too much machine for most farms, too expensive for most budgets, and it existed in a market segment that British agriculture wasn't quite ready to fill. There was a mid-range 141 too, introduced in 1978, offered with a choice of Perkins or Ford power. Both versions sold for exactly the same price, with the Ford being the more powerful of the two at around 143 horsepower. Imagine walking into a dealership today and being offered two completely different engines at the same price and told to pick. That's the kind of company Muir-Hill was. Engineering-led, stubbornly independent, building exactly what it thought the job needed, and it's gone. Absorbed, restructured, closed. The tractor business ended in the early 80s, but go to a big plowing match today, and if you're lucky, you'll hear a Perkins V8 turning over. That sound is unmistakable. Number 4. The Roadless Plowmaster 105 and the Roadless 115, Hounslow, Middlesex. Roadless traction. The company was founded in 1919 by Colonel Philip Johnson, a British Army engineer who had been deeply involved in tank development during the First World War. He took what he'd learned about tracks and applied it to agriculture, building crawler and half-track conversions from the 1920s onwards. From the 1950s, Roadless pivoted to four-wheel drive conversions, mostly based on Ford tractors, and they had a very specific signature: unequal wheels. Big rears, smaller fronts, with a single side-mounted prop shaft feeding drive forward. It looked like a normal tractor that had grown some ambition. Their early front axles came from a wonderfully unglamorous source: surplus GMC military truck axles, bought as war surplus stock, using a system licensed from the Italian firm Leyland. And they had problems. Tractor torque snapped the drive shafts. The differentials were flipped upside down for ground clearance, which starved the bearings of oil, and they failed. Roadless fixed it. In the Plowmaster 95 of the mid-60s, they welded a tab to the differential to direct oil to the bearing, fitted a stronger bearing, and started sourcing better drive shafts from Germany. That's a small company solving a hard problem with its own hands. That's British engineering. By the 70s, the range had grown up. The Plowmaster 94T arrived in 1971, turbocharged, based on the Ford 7000. Then in 1974 came the Plowmaster 105 with a 6.2-liter six-cylinder engine. But the machine to look out for is the Roadless 115, launched in February 1968 and built until May 1975. The 115 broke the Roadless mold completely. Equal-sized wheels, the County and Muir-Hill layout, not the Roadless one, based on the Ford 5000 skid unit, but powered by Ford's six-cylinder industrial engine and rated at 115 horsepower. Roadless designed a completely new cast steel front axle for it. That axle assembly alone weighed a ton. Drive went forward through a center shaft with triple reduction, through the differential, the drop box, and final drives in the front hubs. The whole tractor tipped the scales just shy of 5 tons. And the sales pitch was clever. Roadless argued the 115 had a lower center of gravity than a Muir-Hill and a tighter turning circle than a County. Best of both, production numbers tell you how it went. Something like 182 standard models, plus around 43 high-clearance versions. That's it. Around 225 tractors. Roadless Traction went into liquidation in March 1983. A company that had survived from 1919 through the Depression, through the war, through the whole reshaping of British farming, finally ran out of road. Number 3. The County 1174, County Commercial Cars, Fleet, Hampshire. Founded in 1929 by two brothers, Ernest and Percy Tapp, both First World War Army officers. And for decades, County did one thing better than anybody in Britain. They turned Ford tractors into four-wheel drive monsters. The County trademark was the equal wheel layout with twin prop shafts, one running down each side of the engine, feeding power to massive front hubs. It gave phenomenal traction. It also gave the tractor a turning circle you could measure with a calendar. The County 1174 arrived in 1977, and it was the turbocharged flagship of the range. A Ford six-cylinder engine of around 6.5 liters turbocharged, putting out something in the region of 112 to 113 horsepower, driving all four of those big equal wheels. There was also a forward control version, the FC 1174. where the cab sat right up over the engine. Those found a strange second life away from farming, as drilling rig bases, as lime spreaders, and the Ministry of Defense tested them with 3-line air brakes as potential heavy cross-country tractors for the Army. Above the 1174 sat even bigger things. The 1454 at 145 horsepower weighing 7 tons. Then the 1474 from 1978 at around 149, later pushed to 153, and finally in 1980, the 1884, a Ford engine turbocharged and intercooled, producing 188 horsepower. So what killed County? Ford did. When Ford started fitting four-wheel drive to its own tractors from the 70s onwards, the County proposition fell apart. Ford's own version was cheaper, it was more maneuverable, and it came with the backing of a dealer network County couldn't dream of matching. County's response was to argue correctly that the equal wheel layout was still superior for heavy land traction. Heavy land farmers and contractors agreed, but it wasn't enough of a market. County went into receivership in 1983. The name passed through other hands. Production of a handful of models continued into around 1990, but the great era was over. The 1174 sits right at the peak. Turbocharged, purposeful, unmistakable. If you know what a County looks like, you can spot one from half a mile away, purely from how close together those four huge wheels are. Number 2. The Massey Ferguson 1200. This one is genuinely extraordinary, and it's genuinely forgotten. Launched in late 1971 and reaching customers in 1972, the Massey Ferguson 1200 was the first articulated tractor to be manufactured in Britain. Not four-wheel drive with a steering front axle. Articulated, hinged in the middle. The whole tractor bends. A hydraulic ram swings the front half against the back half, and the rear wheels follow exactly in the tracks of the fronts. It was built at Massey Ferguson's works on Barton Dock Road in Manchester, and it was part of a trio. The Americans got the 1500 at 180 horsepower and the 1800 at 210. Huge things with Caterpillar V8s built in Des Moines, Iowa. Europe got the little brother, the 1200. Little is relative. The 1200 ran a Perkins A6 354, a 5.8-liter straight six, producing 105 horsepower at 2,400 RPM. In Britain in 1972, 105 horsepower was right at the top of the scale. 4 equal wheels, serious ground clearance, central articulation that let the front and rear halves tilt independently, so the tractor could crawl across rough ground without lifting a wheel, and a fuel tank of well over 300 liters, because a machine like this was designed to work all day and not go looking for the fuel bowser. Massey Ferguson also did something the American articulated tractors mostly didn't bother with. They engineered a proper integrated 3-point hitch at the rear, because European farmers didn't just want to pull cultivators. They wanted a tractor that could actually use mounted implements. So why did it fail? Because it was too much too soon. Articulated steering felt alien to farmers who'd spent their lives on conventional tractors. It was expensive, it was big, and the operator had to relearn how to drive. The 1200 was updated to become the 1250 in 1979, and then the whole British articulated experiment was quietly dropped in favor of American-designed machines. 50 years on, they're a cult item. Collectors hunt them, and when you see one at a show bending in the middle as it turns, you realize how genuinely bold it was for Massey Ferguson to build this thing in Manchester in 1971. Number 1. The Trantor, and now the strangest British tractor of them all. It starts in 1972 at what was then UMIST, the University of Manchester Institute of Science and Technology. A research student called Stuart Taylor was studying how tractors were actually used on large farms. His conclusion was radical. He found that a huge proportion of tractor work wasn't plowing at all. It was transport, hauling trailers, moving stuff. And for that job, a conventional farm tractor was hopeless, slow, uncomfortable, unsafe with a loaded trailer, and horribly inefficient on the road. He also noticed that farmers were using Land Rovers to carry people around. because a tractor has one seat, so he designed something completely different. He built the first prototype in a lock-up garage in Manchester. His supervisor, Graham Edwards, joined him, and together they founded a company to develop it. They called it the Transport Tractor. The Trantor. Here's what it had. In the 1970s, full suspension, not a suspended cab bolted on top of a normal tractor, suspension on both axles and separately on the hitch and the three-point linkage, truck-type braking, a chassis, and a cab with 3 seats plus a platform at the rear that could carry more people. Top speed, over 40 miles per hour. Later development versions went considerably faster still. It was shown publicly at the Royal Agricultural Show at Stoneleigh in 1976 with a 55 brake horsepower engine, and the first machines were sold in 1978. The first UK customer was in Scotland. Now think about the date, 1978. The JCB Fastrac, the machine that would finally make the high-speed tractor a mainstream reality, didn't arrive until the 1990s. The Trantor was more than a decade early, and the early Trantor found buyers in some unlikely places. A prototype was bought by Lonhro and shipped to Nigeria. Lonhro then took the next batch and sold them into South Africa, Zambia, Nigeria, and Malaysia for evaluation. A Series 2 followed in the 1980s, fitted with a Leyland engine, with air brakes so it could legally run high-speed trailers on the road. There's even a well-documented moment in September 1984 when Anthony Bamford of JCB drove a Series 2 Trantor himself. UK production finally ended in 1987. The official reason is heartbreakingly British. Many of the component suppliers in the Midlands that Trantor depended on had gone out of business, so the world's first properly suspended road-legal high-speed farm tractor was invented in a Manchester lockup, sold in tiny numbers, and killed off by the collapse of British manufacturing around it. Then, years later, the concept came back and made someone else a fortune. If you want one machine that sums up the whole story of British tractor building in the 1970s, brilliant, early, underfunded, and forgotten, it's the Trantor. If you've got one of these in a shed, or if your dad or your granddad drove one, tell me in the comments. I want to know which of these you've actually seen in the metal. And if you know a British tractor I've missed, tell me that too. There are more of them out there than anyone realizes.